only thing we have to fear is
in war,
fear itself.
there is no substitute for victory.
Let us never negotiate out of fear.
We stand undivided, forever united, fighting hand in hand for the liberty we've earned, for glory and honor, for our sons and daughters, ever mindful of the lessons we've learned. Let the torch of freedom burn.
You found your way to the intersection of faith and politics. Thanks for joining us here on WallBuilders Live. I'm Rick Green here with David Barton, and we've got two special guests in the studio with us, two state representatives from the great state of Texas, Dan Flynn and Phil King. Good to have you guys.
Hey, how are you?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, one of you guys is actually David's state representative. So, Phil, does David call you like 40 times a day to lobby you, or is it 25 times a day?
No, man, it's the other way around. I'm calling him 30 or 40 times a day down saying, what do I do? How do I handle this?
You know, I actually use Phil as, he doesn't know this, I use Phil as an example in pastors' conferences across the nation, because I talk about how that now the technology is such that, like on the life issue, we get emails saying, hey, Bill 423 is going to be in committee today at 2:30, and you want them to vote for the Second Amendment. And you get all the stuff, and you call the office and tell them exactly what's in there. And so I may get 40 emails a session on life issues of where a bill is, what I did. And I have never called Phil once on any of those life issues. And it's not because I'm not pro-life. It's not because Phil's not pro-life. The point I make to pastors is you want to elect someone you don't have to lobby. And Phil's in there because he's 100% pro-life. I don't have to call. If I have to lobby on major issues, I've already lost the battle. I need somebody in there that believes what we believe, that I don't have to convince them to do what's right. And so I've never had to call Phil on one of those issues, had never had to call him on marriage or anything else. You want to elect people, you don't have to lobby. And that's what we tell pastors is if you want to elect people, you don't have to lobby. You got to go recruit people. You don't have to lobby. And it starts with the recruiting. And Phil's been one of those great guys that has been a rep for a number of years, and I just don't have to call him. It's been really good.
I'm just well trained.
That's right.
And Dan Flynn as well. Both you guys have been great champions for life and so many other issues. We're just thrilled to have you in studio with us. Give us a quick outlook on 2015, not only for Texas but the country. A lot of great pro-life legislation has been passed in the last few years. You guys were a big part of the major victories here in Texas.
Can I throw it out? I want to start it, Rick.
Yeah.
I saw just a couple of days ago gas at $1.75 a gallon. Tell me what's going on.
$1.73 right now.
$1.70. I see $1.73.
Yeah.
What's up?
You know what? If you followed it, and when you get to the age that I'm at, you've seen those ups and downs many times. It's always amazing to me that it happens when it's getting closer to a presidential election. And so it makes you kind of skeptical of what's going on. But, I think it's obviously going to have some kind of an impact on Texas because, that's what we do in Texas. But I'm still excited. I think Texas is still in its shining days, and all of our best days are ahead of us, and we've got a lot of other things that are happening for us that's going to be positive besides just the oil and gas industry.
You know, if Texas were its own country, which is always really fun to think about, right? Yeah,
it already is.
But we would be the 6th largest producer of oil and gas in the world. We produce more oil than any OPEC nation except for Saudi. We do about 3 million barrels a day, and that's continuing to
You're
grow.
saying just Texas, not the nation.
Oh,
Texas
yeah, just
does
Texas.
More than...
Just Texas.
Wow.
We do 3 million barrels of oil a day. And so what's so odd about this...
And we haven't tapped out our reserves by a long shot.
No. We've got a long way to go.
Yeah.
And it's all the new technology from the marriage of horizontal drilling and fracking. The marriage of those two technologies have allowed us to get to source rock, gas, and oil that before we always knew was there, just didn't know how to get it out. Now we can. But it's such an interesting deal because these drop in oil prices, which have gone from about 95 a barrel just about 5 months ago, I guess now, down to 50 earlier in the week. I didn't see what it was today. Really isn't about market forces. I mean, there is a glut on the market. The world economy's down. They aren't using as much oil. That's a factor. But it really comes down to the Saudis just deciding that they're going to overproduce.
Yeah, that's what I've heard is they're just flooding the market.
Yeah, they're in a price war with Texas.
Yeah.
And in a price war with the United States. And
the rest of the United States can thank Texas for the cheap gas you're getting right now.
That's right. I mean, that's really true. And what
I wouldn't wait for that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. Don't wait for that.
What we really hope will happen is Congress will undo some Carter administration regulation and allow us to begin to export oil so we can compete in the world market, because we can do that very effectively on exporting liquefied natural gas and oil.
We can't export right now?
No, just a very limited amount. You can export some gas liquids like condensate and things like that. The first tanker of that actually went out of Galveston, Texas, in this last March, I think, or April. Wow. And so, but you can't. There's a Carter administration back from when we've had the first OPEC issues.
That's back when we had the gas lines and back when we had the price freezes and
back in the 70s.
And everything that's against a free market is what we're talking about.
That's right. And so they passed a prohibition on exporting oil. But once we begin to do that, then we're going to be able to compete against Russia, taking natural gas to Europe. We're going to be able to compete worldwide in exporting oil, and that'll give us some new markets. And I think we'll compete very effectively.
That's an economic boon to the United States too. I mean,
it is.
Our export stuff. If we get that deficit, wow,
Phil's talking about our economy. We're actually have a larger economy than Australia.
Yeah, we do.
Which is kind of remarkable.
Just Texas.
Yes.
Just Texas.
But again, I have to keep reiterating that because sometimes we start talking about how big that piece is, and you automatically think got to be the nation if you're comparing it to another nation. But you guys are just saying Texas.
Yeah, if you go back the last 10 years, a full third of all the net new jobs created in the entire country over the last 10 years were created in Texas.
That's right.
And I'm assuming that's no other state comes anywhere close.
Well, we've got about 23 million in Texas.
27
million out of 330 million. So that's about 8% of the nation's population lives here. But instead of producing 8% of the jobs, we produce 30%, 4 times our proportion.
And our unemployment usually keeps about 2 points below the national unemployment.
Guys, hang on. We're going to take a very quick break. We'll be back to the Texas Love Fest here on WallBuilders Live. Okay, so we're going to brag about America as well and talk about some of the things coming up in the nation and talk about what these legislators are going to be working on to help protect our freedom. Stay with us right here on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court recently overturned the jury sentence of a man convicted of the brutal murder of a 71-year-old woman because the prosecuting attorney had mentioned a Bible verse in the courtroom. Yet consider what happened in the 1778 case, Respublica versus John Roberts. Thomas McKean, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, was the Chief Justice of that court, and addressing John Roberts after the jury had sentenced him to death for treason, McKean told him, "You will probably have but a short time to live. Before you launch into eternity, it behooves you to repent of your evil deeds, to be incessant in prayers to the great and merciful God to forgive your manifold transgressions and sins, to teach you to rely upon the merit and passion of a dear Redeemer." This prominent founding father actually delivered a salvation message to the defendant in the courtroom.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. We're here with 2 state representatives from the great state of Texas, Phil King and Dan Flynn. David Barton also here, and we're talking about not just what's happening in Texas, but across the nation.
Wait a minute. I got a question before we go. Phil, you're a top ALEC now, and all those thousands of state legislators. Does every legislator from every state say the great state of Alabama, Alaska, or is that just a Texas thing?
You know, a few do, but it's just because they've heard Texas say that, and it just kind of rolls into their lingo.
Because they want to be, you're either a Texan or you want to be a Texan.
You know, say that jokingly, but it is interesting. The American Legislative Exchange Council, and then Dan's on the board of NCSL, which I would say is the more.
Go ahead and explain both those groups, because people won't know.
I'll tell you about American Legislative Exchange Council is a national organization of legislators and private sector members, and we try to come together, business folks.
How many legislators?
We usually will have, depending on the cycle, 1,500 to 2,000.
Okay.
And then
from all 50 states.
All 50 states, and then
you're president this year.
Yes,
got it.
And then we'll have private sector members, and actually I said that wrong. I think we're at about 1,400 members right now. Election cycles move things back and forth. But anyway, we try to bring business folks together. We try to bring policymakers together and get in the room and talk over issues, could develop model legislation. We've got about a 42-year history of building legislation. Conservative deals with free markets, federalism, limited government, and pushing that out to the states, finding best practices in other states. And it's a very successful model, and it's a great organization. But being there, you do have, we do talk to other states, and I'm telling you, everybody wants to be Texas. What we've done economically, what we've done on social policies, what we've done for freedom. Everybody wants to be Texas.
Now, the one thing they probably don't want, though, is our border issues. Very, very tough situation right now, and you guys have helped to appropriate money so that Texas could do what the United States should be doing in protecting our borders. And tell us some of the good news in terms of the changes you've seen when you just took the steps that we've tried to get the feds to take for a while.
Yeah, when Texas actually did what the federal government's supposed to be doing.
Absolutely. And Rick, I don't know if you know or not, but I serve on Homeland Security, and I'm also still a very active member in the State Guard, just like Phil is. And when I go down to the border, I'm wearing two hats, and I've been there probably more times than I can count at this point. It is a very dangerous place. When I fly helicopters, when I'm going up and down the Rio Grande in a gunboat, yes, they do shoot at us, our people. The good news is this. The bad guys, they don't shoot at the Border Patrol anymore.
Yeah, you guys now have 50 caliber machine guns, don't you? Yeah.
What they do is they do throw rocks, and they do occasionally fire a shot at the Border Patrol and even the local. But when they see those DPS uniforms, they don't want nothing to do with it.
And DPS, the Department of Public Safety. That's our state folks.
And then we also have the Texas Parks and Wildlife down there. Who are very, very important element for us because they,
that's your game wardens.
That's right. And they can board ships. They can go into houses without probable cause because they're game enforcers. And when they see what's happening, then next thing you know, we've got a DPS guy there or a Department of Public Safety there, and we're catching a lot of bad guys there. Going up and down the border in a helicopter. It would just thrill you to see the technology that we have and how we catch bad guys. I know last time I was down there, we're flying at about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we spy them, we grit them. One man on the border, on the floor, on the ground, is chasing them down. We're in a helicopter, and he's chasing them down with lasers. And when he catches them, he takes them all the way back, and we're talking about him running on the ground, maybe a couple of miles.
Wow.
And he does it by himself. He wraps them up, sends them back. Next thing you know, he's back out on the ground. We've had a tremendous number of captures, and now here again, it goes back to the federal government. If they're from Mexico, we can send them right back. But if they're from another country that's not a bordered country, they get to come and get one of these propitious slips, which means, as I heard Phil was talking about earlier, that means I'm going to show up at court. Well, you can bet.
Yeah.
The return rate is not very big.
Well, yeah. Once they release them, they don't even know where they go.
That's right.
On their honor, they're supposed to show up in court, and that doesn't happen.
But the scary thing is 70% of the people that cross that border are what we call OTMs, other than Mexicans.
Wow.
And they're coming over here. They're coming here from the Middle East. They're coming here from South America, Central America, and China. And they're not coming over here looking for jobs like the Mexicans. They're coming over here to kill us.
So what's the apprehension rate? What do you get per day? How many are you getting?
I can't tell you on a daily basis because it just so varies. But we've had a good since we did the last surge, and let me tell you, I don't care what anybody says or thinks about Rick Perry. If it wasn't for him, that border could very well be here in Aleta, Texas. Yeah. He has stopped that surge and has done a tremendous job in enforcing our Department of Public Safety. We have National Guard members down there. Now we're going to be probably pulling them back because we're going to double our Department of Public Safety people, and it's because it is a criminal element. It's one that we have to address.
Yeah. The human side of this is what gets left out of the equation, and people talk about, we're being humane by allowing them to come over and work. And let me tell you, anybody who understands the situation down there knows it's anything but humane. Brooks County alone, just since 2011 up through September 1st, last numbers I saw, have found 200, and they're a county on the Texas border, one of the main entry points, probably the main entry point. They've found 243 bodies just since 2011. can you imagine if that happened here in Parker County or in Tarrant County or anywhere, that we found 243 bodies? We would be up in arms, but people ignore it for some reason because it's down there on the border. Oh, I guess it's okay. Well, it's not okay.
And Phil, last time I was down there, during a 1 week span, we picked up about 150 bodies.
Wow.
And that's on our side of the river. We have no idea the death count on the other side in reality.
And it is the young people. The cartel gets them to bring, they're usually 70-pound bags of drugs. They bring them over here, they get the drugs, then they abuse those young people and leave them to die.
Or you'll just have somebody being brought over by the coyotes. Those are human smugglers and drug smugglers. And so they're bringing a group over and bringing them across, and they're out in the wilderness, and it's a wilderness down there. And they bring them across, and if you get snake bit or you're sexually assaulted, which happens a lot, or you're injured or you get sick, they just leave you there. And you're out in the middle of nowhere, you get dehydrated and you just die.
And the drug cartels are giving those young people's family thousands of dollars to let them ride on top of a freight train to come up to the Texas border, and then they come here, walk across, and give up.
Yeah.
And so then we're Steve McCraw, who's the director of the Department of Public Safety. His whole focus is to let's keep them in the river, because if we stop them in the river, then they don't come over here and get to claim American citizenship.
Phil, any idea how many folks were?
I just got through looking at the numbers, so they're fresh on me, Dan. And I know back in January of 2014, we were averaging in just the Rio Grande Valley, not the whole border of Texas, not the whole United States border. We were averaging 6,600 captures a day. By September of this year,
and this is not federal captures. This is state captures.
Well, no, that's all combined.
Is it all
combined?
Okay.
That was down to 1,200 after Texas put in place its surge. Was down to 1,200 a day by the early fall. Now, bear in mind,
is that because fewer people are now coming across because of the surge?
A little bit of both. I think, when we said 6,600 a day, that's the ones that they were catching. So we don't know what 2, 3, 4 times that many get across undetected. So I can tell you this, that up through September 1st of this year, we had apprehended.
That's 25,000 a day.
Well,
and we're catching 1/4 of that.
I can tell you this, through September 1st, in the Rio Grande Valley alone of Texas, over 250,000 people were apprehended illegally crossing. And as Dan said, if they're from Mexico, if they're Mexican nationals, they're immediately sent back. Now, they probably come right back. But if they're not from Mexico, they're not Mexican nationals, they're given a court date, which the vast, vast majority do not respond
never show up,
and they're just released. They don't respond. I can tell you that here in Parker County, right here in your and my neighborhood, I got a call from our sheriff about 2 months ago on a Sunday morning. He said, Phil, we just arrested a guy this morning. He broke into a house in North Parker County last night, sexually assaulted a little 9-year-old girl. We just arrested him. He has been busted 4 times for illegal entry. He has been arrested 4 times, which means he's illegally entered at least 5 times. He was even on probation with the feds for having illegally entered. Oh, this time we're going to really slap your hand if you come back. So he's still in the Parker County Jail because we're not going to let him go. The vast majority of people coming across are just wanting to work, wanting to get reunited with families. They're just wanting to be a part of society. There's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, and they're doing it the wrong way. But you do have criminals coming over, people that are bad guys in Mexico. They're getting away from that. You have people that are involved in drug trade, human smuggling, forced prostitution, on and on and on. So we have bad guys coming over.
The bottom line is that the federal government has done nothing to help us. They don't even recognize it's a problem. That's why we had to put the National Guard down there. It is a force multiplier. It's been good, but the best thing to do, since it is a criminal element, is to have our department.
But since the National Guard's been down there, you drop from 6,600 to 1,200 a day to 1,200.
Yeah. And right now it's slow because winter it traditionally slows down because of the travel up through from Central America to North America to North America.
Our federal government was advertising in South America and Central America to come to America. You can get a free ride. And to emphasize that, they had already contracted for buses to pick up these people in January when they all started arriving, and we saw it in June, July. No.
Wow. What's the price tag that Texas, the state, doing something the Fed should be doing, but what's the price tag for us?
3 weeks ago, I went to Washington, D.C., and I presented all of our congressmen and our senators a bill for $559 million that we'd spent since we had started our surge.
And you do expect that bill to be paid promptly by the White House, don't you?
I was really wanting to bring a check back, but I guess it's in the mail.
Didn't happen, huh?
Yeah.
And Dan, isn't that just for this last 2-year budget period?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
$559 million in the last 2 years.
Actually, no. It's just since we started this surge.
Oh,
I
since the surge?
wonder what
Yeah.
you guys have saved the nation
Yeah.
as a result of that, though.
But you know what, Rick, and this is very interesting.
And I mean not just in money,
Yeah.
but crime and all the other
Lives,
problems that
crime,
you've been
etc. Yeah.
Phil's had other states call him and ask him to take them to the border. I've taken groups of other states. And one thing that nobody seems to know, we've got 14 states that have volunteered to come down and help us.
Wow.
Yeah. In fact, it was my last trip there. Our pilot was a young girl from Nebraska. And when I asked her, I said, why in the world do you want to come down here? And she said, well, this is a real-life experience. If I'm in Nebraska, I'm going to be doing training missions. And she said, I joined the military because I wanted to be a part of protecting America.
Wow.
That's fantastic. Guys, take a quick break. We'll be right back. Our guests today, State Representatives Phil King and Dan Flynn. Stay with us on WallBuilders Live. Have you ever wanted to learn more about the United States Constitution, but just felt like, man, the classes are boring, or it's just that old language from 200 years ago, or I don't know where to start? People want to know, but it gets frustrating because you don't know where to look for truth about the Constitution either. Well, we've got a special program for you available now called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green, and it's actually a teaching done on the Constitution at Independence Hall in the very room where the Constitution was framed. We take you both to Philadelphia, the Cradle of Liberty and Independence Hall, and to the WallBuilders Library, where David Barton brings the history to life to teach the original intent of our founding fathers. We call it the Quick Start Guide to the Constitution because in just a few hours through these videos, you will learn the Citizen's Guide to America's Constitution. You'll learn what you need to do to help save our constitutional republic. It's fun, it's entertaining, and it's going to inspire you to do your part to preserve freedom for future generations. It's called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green. You can find out more information on our website now at wallbuilders.com.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. State Representatives Phil King and Dan Flynn of Texas are with us today. We've been talking about the border and some other things. Guys, I'm going to ask an unfair question. What if you could guarantee it was going to happen, or if you were king for a day, what's the one issue for you guys each this year in 2015 you'd like to see accomplished? Can be state, federal, whatever. You pick it.
For me, it's real simple. The 10th Amendment says that the states have the right to take care of the issues in Texas, and so often, I guess it doesn't say Texas, but it does say states.
Well, is there another state other than Texas? I'm sorry, that was arrogant.
The U.S. Congress, somehow or another, they have forgotten that the states created them. They didn't create the states. And so I filed a bill that I'm hoping to move forward with that and see if we can't awaken some people up there. That's one of the issues I'm doing.
So number one for you is get the feds back in their proper box and make sure the states retain their authority.
And make sure we have American law on American soil.
Phil, how about you?
Well, I'm with Dan. Obviously abortion is always the preeminent issue because life is always the preeminent issue. But I have the highest level of confidence working with legislators around the country that states know how to do things and can get things done. And if we would go back to what the original concept of federalism was, where the states were really in charge of all the issues, but a very small amount which were enumerated in the Constitution for the Fed to handle. If we could go back to empowering states again, rebalancing that power structure between the federal and the states will deal with issues on the social agenda. They'll deal with issues on the fiscal agenda. We'll deal with education. The states can figure out how to do things. When you've got 50 different states out there developing best practices and competing for best ideas, competing for businesses to come in and families, you will see America just surge in the right direction. I have total complete confidence in the states to do that. You'll always have maybe a stray here or there, but I really think we can. The preeminent problem facing America today is the overreach of the federal government.
And as far as in our Texas legislature this year, the big issue is going to obviously be health care. That's the one thing that
and that's a federal problem that you're having to deal with.
Right. And it's just like the Common Core that you hear about so much on the education. Those are big issues. The biggest issues that we face are what we have to do is try to fight the federal government.
Great example. Texas has a $97 billion state-funded budget. $30 billion of that. People say, why don't you have money for schools? Why don't you have more money for transportation? Why don't we do this or that? $30 billion of that $97 billion is for Medicaid alone, a federal welfare program, federal health program that is fraud-ridden, provides a very low quality of health care. The state has no control over it. All we do is we're required to write a check for 42% of every dollar that the
So
Fed
in addition to me
decides
paying
spent.
federal taxes, 1/3 of my Texas taxes are going to the feds anyway.
Yeah, basically, 30 billion of $97 billion is going to the Fed. It was 24 billion 2 years ago. It'll probably be 36, 37 billion. We now spend, by federal edict, the state of Texas now spends as much money on Medicaid, not Medicare, but Medicaid, as we do on public education.
Wow.
Last word, Phil, as we go, as you are heading up ALEC this year and your fellow legislators across the country, for our listeners that are frustrated when change doesn't come fast enough, help us keep the faith and keep fighting and look long term.
Well, and be reasonable and rational. You know, the libs have been great about understanding that you win ball games with base hits, not with home runs. Conservatives have always tried to hit home runs. We need to recognize that we need to have a strategic approach to taking back our country. We will do that through base hits. And if we are methodic, as the liberals have been, now they can look back 25 years later and they owned everything. If we'll take that same approach, be patient, work together, don't be disruptive, don't be dissenting, work together as a team, we'll take our country back.
I love it. Great job, guys. Appreciate so much y'all coming on. That's State Representative Dan Flynn, State Representative Phil King. Thank you for joining David Barton and Rick Green here on WallBuilders Live.
We stand undivided.